Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your valuable time to be here at the conference and be at my presentation. The economics of machinery manufacturing, with particular focus from a West Australian point of view. This is a subject chosen by myself in 2012 during a climate of questionable viability of farming enterprises in the low rainfall zone of the Eastern Wheat Belt in WA. There was an immediate need for cost reductions without the loss of production capacity. Machinery and technology play a big part in achieving this. So finding ways for producers in my area to gain access to production increasing machinery at viable costings was a general aim of my studies. First, I'd just like to acknowledge and say a big thank you to grain growers for their continued support of Nuffield Australia over a number of years, with particular mention to Ray Morgan, the WA representative, who's a head full of knowledge of the grain industry and has become a mentor to myself. As well as thank my brother Colin, a business partner, who took care of the operations of our farm while I was travelling away overseas. So a little bit more background. We operate a grain growing enterprise running north of Hyden, 3 hours east of Perth. Wheat, barley, canola are our main crops. We utilise an extra 1.5 full-time employee equivalents to plant and harvest between 13 and 15,000 hectares of crop each year. We rely on large equipment with the latest technology to cover the country in the most effective manner, and our growth going forward now is limited by labour and or availability of large machinery to cover the land in a more timely manner. So I travelled the world a couple of times. Before I set out, I had a list of operations that I just had to go and visit. Travelling around, there's a lot more interesting ones that I found on the way. But while each individual business was very different, it wasn't long before there were some consistent, broader themes and reoccurrences that were becoming apparent. Upon entering an operation, it seemed clear to me as to how open that operation was going to be for information. For example, general business structure and general ownership is viewed quite differently to say their wage bill as a percentage of their gross income. But this was expected on my behalf, in particular with the private companies. On the factory floor, some operations had sensitive procedures that they wished to protect, IT or product development. But generally speaking, companies were quite open to their physical production of their products and their factory lines, and I thank them all for that. So Consultants Farm & Co have data over a number of years highlighting the value of capital invested that farmers make in machinery. This cost is continually rising while our commodities produced are being valued less and less by the marketplace due to the erosion effects of inflation. So justifying a major capital investment that nowadays is far more complex than getting the price from your local dealer and a no-worries attitude. Being able to measure or predict the production advances or operational cash savings from one purchase to another is vital for limited cash resources to be allocated from the budgets. So, firstly, the question of why does machinery cost so much today? It's merely a reflection of the percentage of physical production required to generate the necessary cash flow for capital purchases as compared to years gone by. Quite simply, devaluation of food over time. So for example, if wheat had stayed in check with the CPI since the marvellous year of 1973, it would be now worth $1,800 a tonne, meaning when I buy a $750,000 header, I would only need 416 tonne to pay for that header instead of the 2,450 that I need today. So costs follow inflation, but the production increases on a per hectare level haven't been adequate to keep pace. So therefore a smaller margin has been taken by the primary producer. To counter this, more hectares are required so he can generate enough income to provide a living for his family, as well as enough income to keep the business on the level. So I wanted to find ways to allow primary producers in my area greater choice of products and more competition for machinery supply in our area, preferably locally built. To do this, I had to get an understanding as to whether Australia could compete against the multinationals coming out of North America for machinery supply. North America is a major source of grain handling equipment from WA and hence are the major competitor for any manufacturing industry locally. Standout differences were in labour remuneration, taxation, currency valuations and government incentives. But they do need to be put into perspective. For example, if a product built only has a small wage component as a percentage of total gross cost, it can easily be negated by a more favourable tax regime or a small movement in the currency valuations. So some components and products are best being mass-produced in the low-cost economies of Asia. We need to accept this and use it to our advantage however we can. So to build locally, products need to be innovative in their build design. Identify those products that have high transport issues, high cost with few competitors in the marketplace. Well, what does this actually mean? Well, the best example I found was a seagull factory in central Canada. It's basically an assembly line. They outsource as many of the smaller components as they can, and they just manufacture the larger framed components in-house themselves. So while they may use up to 10,000 press wheels in any given year, they only order what they require for a particular machine. This means they are leveraging the expertise and the R&D of outside companies, but more importantly, if they only need 80 press wheels for an individual machine, 80 press wheels turn up on a pallet that is delivered direct to the factory floor to be assembled inside their factory. This means they don't need a massive warehouse out the back. It means they don't need labour to go through that warehouse to pick out the press wheels and the bearing and the spindle to bring to the factory floor. It also means that a press wheel is the latest technology that is available on the market today to go into the machine for the primary producer. So population was another issue that West Australia deals with. It's only 4,200 registered grain-growing businesses in Western Australia. You need population for consumers of product as well as a diverse workforce for the manufacturing industry to take place. A manufacturer can gain dominant market share by being based in close proximity to the market demographic. Travelling around the world, it was noticed that within a rough radius of 150 kilometres around a place of manufacture, significant market share was obtained by that particular product. This cannot be underestimated. Primary producers like to be able to see the machine working in their area, how it performs. They like to be able to give feedback to the manufacturer as well as receive support and backup and warranty from that manufacturer. This is a very important fact that cannot be underestimated. So there's three ways that primary producers can go about the machinery acquisition methods. Firstly, support of local manufacturers and dealers, direct importing or custom build. So let's look at the advantages of supporting your local manufacturer. Generally speaking, there's a relatively short lag time from order to receivement of the product. It is relatively easy to estimate the liquidation value of the machine further down the track when you're doing an initial purchase. The local R&D is done in our area, so we know that it works and the machine does not to be operated in a compromised position by the primary producer in his environment. The supply of parts and after-sales support for machinery setup and warranty services is readily available by the local manufacturer, as well as all the taxation paid by that particular company stays within the Australian economy, the company tax and the wages tax. Direct importing has its place. And generally speaking, the savings come from the bypassing the third-party commissions on the freight and handling of the machine. But there are situations where specialised equipment for a particular purpose is actually required and unavailable in Australia. Overseas technology is required for this to happen. But they are not the only reasons for direct importing. On your right up there we have a 36-metre disc seeder from an American-owned family farm in the centre of Brazil. Their issue was they were 500 kilometres away from the nearest dealer. They did not receive support or warranty. So they import direct from John Deere themselves, all the new machinery and all the parts and maintenance that they require is done on farm under the guidance of their own workshop. And on the other side, it's a 24-metre air seeder bar dragged out of a sea container ready to be assembled on a farm in Australia. Now this particular bar was purchased through an established machinery dealer, but the farmer himself was assembling it, putting it together with substantial cost savings. But more importantly, the primary producer noted that every single bolt had anti-seize put on it and every bearing was repacked with grease, therefore limiting his maintenance program further down the track. And then thirdly, we come on to custom build. Custom build can lead to many opportunities in life. Up there we have the drawings of the original D2 Caterpillar dozer in 1938 by Clarence Best, which laid the foundations of the crawler tractor and the bulldozers that have turned the Caterpillar Incorporated company into one of the largest manufacturing enterprises in the world today. On the other side is the original conserva pack, built by Jim Halford, a fellow Nuffield scholar who I spent quite a bit of time with in central Canada. He developed the conserva pack and he was selling it throughout the world prior to his passing on the patents to John Deere, who now market the conserva pack brand around the world. This was done from his backyard in central Canada, 600 metres from his house. And the picture down the bottom is a mother bin that we built in 2010. It has quite a few unique features on there that we needed that we're unable to buy in the marketplace to enhance the logistics of our harvest. But for many, there are many benefits to an individual primary producer to take on board a custom build. They do need a certain skill set to be able to manufacture a suitable machine for their individual requirements. Time needs to be allocated for the project in amongst the day-to-day operations of a farming enterprise. A basic workshop needs for steelworking are generally available on the farm already, but substantial cost savings are easily achievable. In my experience, has been at least 50%. Efforts need to focus on higher cost equipment, one with fewer competitors in the marketplace, less complex technology, and the bulk grain handling equipment that we use fits this criteria perfectly. So for time-poor farmers unable to sustain a full-time boilermaker or a fitter and turner on their payroll, and they want to custom build certain types of equipment, I propose a cooperative type arrangement. The cooperative idea can give volumetric scale to the purchase of steel, welding rods, and other consumables that they require. The cooperative can provide the skilled labour and the design principles for the manufacturing. The farmer can provide the trade assistance and the customised ideas for the build. An analysis of the build cost versus the capital cost of the product needs to be done first. But managing the timeshare of the skilled employees will be the greatest challenge. So will this idea work? Well, we're going to know soon enough. As we speak, we have a vehicle bodybuilder on the payroll at the moment, and we're looking for a suitably qualified mechanic or a fitter and turner to come on board by January 2015 to start building at the order that we have around Hyden already. Whether you see that name in the future is irrelevant to me. It's the idea of getting more cost-effective machinery that can help the local farmers is what it's all about. So I'd like to thank you for your attention, and just thank my family who had to stay home while I was travelling around in the natural habitat, and my wife for looking after the house while I was gone for 3 months of the year last year. And thank you to Nuffield Australia for the wonderful opportunity that they have given to myself. Thank you.